think, act, and prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Money Level Show, where we think, act, and prosper. So today I'm going to share my experience at Rick Rule's Uranium Investing Bootcamp, and also give you all some information on why I am even more bullish on uranium after doing this bootcamp, but then also just some things that I've been picking up on in the news and in the media. So let's go ahead and get into it. First things first, Rick Rule's investment bootcamp was definitely worth the $99 that it costed. So I personally got a lot of information on uranium that I never knew. He had some of the well-known investors, well-known CEOs of some of the companies that I actually invest in come onto the bootcamp and actually share what they're doing, share some of the sentiment on uranium, share some of the fundamentals on uranium and all these different things. And it just made me even more bullish. Like, for example, he had the CEO of Cameco, NextGen, the CEO of Kazatomprom, and many other companies, Deep Yellow, Fission. And this was very important for me because I was able to see, like, okay, well, these people are coming on here talking about this, and they're giving me a lot more knowledge than what I had before. So that was very helpful. He also had Justin Hume come on the show, which was very great to see. My guy, Justin Hume, y'all know he comes on my channel and he shares his time with us to talk about uranium and just why it's such a bullish sector. And so I really want to dive into this and give you all just some more information on just what I receive, and as well as some things that are developing around the world in terms of uranium. So let's get to it. Now, one thing that was being talked about is that the senators and politicians are looking to ban U.S. imports of Russian uranium. Now, this is very, very bullish for uranium. It's also very, very concerning because uranium makes up about 20% of the United States baseload power. Now, so you had senators introduce the bill to ban U.S. imports of Russian uranium. And I've talked to you all multiple times that we have these politicians in office that are making decisions that ultimately affect us. However, we can profit off of this if we think, act, and prosper and invest into uranium. However, this is not financial advice. Now, when you look at this, U.S. Republican senators on Thursday introduced a bill to ban U.S. imports of Russian uranium to punish Moscow for its invasion of Ukraine. So here's the link to the bill right here. It says this bill comes as Biden administration has been weighing sanctions on Russian nuclear power company Rosatom, a major supplier of fuel and technology to power plants around the world. Now, we know these politicians are just about to blow this up, right? And we can either be on the receiving end or we could be the victim. Now, so this is kind of some of the things that are playing out that actually makes me more bullish on it. Now, let's look at Russia. Now, you got Russia considering possible ban on uranium exports to U.S. as countermeasure. So you had U.S. senators introduce this bill to ban imports of Russian uranium. Now you have Russia introducing bills to ban uranium exports to the United States. Russia is considering the possibility of banning the export of uranium to the United States as part of Russia's response to sanctions. And the Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak said at a meeting with the State Duma faction of the Liberal Democratic Party of Russia. Now, these politicians, in my opinion, are going to blow this thing up. Now, I'm a holder of uranium stocks, and I think that this is going to be very bullish. I mean, that's just my opinion. Now, let's look at some more. So now you got uranium prices are through the roof as war shifts thinking on nuclear power. Now, this was a recent article. Uranium prices have gained as much as 40% since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, touching levels the market hasn't seen in more than a decade. Even though the war has little immediate impact on global supplies of fuel used to generate nuclear energy. Now, so we see that the price of uranium is continuing to go up. We also have Sprott in there still buying physical pounds of uranium, and they're still actually squeezing the market, and the price of uranium is going up. So this is other bullish news right here. Now, some other things. You're looking at other countries like the Philippines. Philippines approves revival of nuclear power to replace coal. So now you have the Philippines getting on board with the nuclear story. And there's just a lot of factors that goes into this and how countries are really focused on decarbonization, which we're going to talk a little more about that. But the Philippines approves revival of nuclear power to replace coal plants. And we've heard from Justin Huhn about the Japanese restarts and things of that nature. Now, when we're asking ourselves, about decarbonizing and this trend that the world is trying to take towards decarbonizing and clean energy and also reducing greenhouse gases and emissions and all these different things, you're seeing that uranium is the answer for this. So that is another reason why I am very bullish on this sector, y'all. So those are some things to think about. Now, just looking at the uranium price chart, you can see that uranium went through a huge bull run in the early 2000s. I mean, it went as high as about $140 a pound. And at this time, there was only a few stocks to choose from. As Rick Rule says that he was in a few of the different companies. And there were very few. I think there were only 10 to choose from. And then by the end of that time, they had about 400 or something. I think right now we're back down to somewhere around 60, somewhere in that area. My numbers could be off. I mean, in this boot camp, I received a lot of information. I got to go back and actually look at the information again and just digest it and everything. It was about 11 hours, but you can see that on May 7th, 2007, I mean, this may not be the topping date or whatever. It could be June 1st or whatever, but it hit about $140 a pound. Then it had a sharp correction down to about $40 a pound. Then it spiked up again to about $72, somewhere in that range. And this was around the time that Japan had the big earthquake and tsunami, and they had the Fukushima incident with the nuclear power plant. And then uranium went through just a strong bear market for years and it hasn't recovered. And now we're back on this uptrend with uranium back at $57 a pound. So we haven't even reached the all-time highs for before in the early 2000s. I mean, even in 2011, we hit $75 a pound. We haven't even reached there yet. And these stocks are still very cheap, y'all. They're still very cheap. So I'm still very bullish on it. So now I want to just give you all just some more fundamentals on just why I am bullish for uranium so that you all can see the writing in the sand and you can think, act, and prosper for yourself. So let's get to it. So uranium is actually very safe and it's very reliable, and its capacity, it has a lot more capacity than many of the other forms of energy. So uranium has about a 92.5% capacity factor versus oil, which is at 13.4%. And then you have coal, which is at 40.2%. So uranium, it doesn't take a whole lot. It has capacity to be a full base load power. And the second thing is that nuclear energy produces the least amount of CO2 emissions. I mean, uranium is actually at a 3 when you look at the emissions per gigawatt versus wind, which is at 4, solar at 5, and then you have oil at 720 and coal at 820. So these are just the emissions that they release in the air per gigawatt hour. So this is very bullish for me. I mean, especially with the goals that politicians are trying to implement. Now, when you think about the goals that each country has, I mean, these countries are passing policy, literal policy, to be able to introduce these carbon emission free goals, these decarbonization goals. I mean, you have United States, they have a lot of goals for aggressive decarbonization by 2050. Canada's coming out saying about 2050, that is when they want to be decarbonized. The United Kingdom, France, you have Japan at 2050, China at 2060, and that's a huge nation. And then you have the European Union at 2050 as well. So when you're looking at this, like, okay, the next 30 years, they want to be fully decarbonized. And we already know that wind and solar isn't as reliable as uranium. So that is why I am even more bullish. And another bullish thing is that the demand continues to increase and the production continues to fall. So that is very important factor. Supply and demand. We have less supply, but demand is growing. I mean, you have the population continuing to grow, and now you have these countries that are all trying to come into the space and actually use nuclear energy. And we're seeing that the production is actually pretty low. And when the CEO of Cameco came on, he talked about the mines Cigar Lake and McArthur River, and talked about how they didn't start production yet and how they're kind of just chilling back a little bit on some of the production. And this is a trend that continues to happen. And so that is going to cause the uranium price to go even higher, especially as countries come in and fight in this space. And the price of uranium has to go up or people's lights go out. It's just plain and simple. Now, let's get into the misinformation. So there's a lot of misinformation about uranium. People think that uranium means war, nuclear energy means war, all these different things, and they still have a lot of misconceptions and misinformation on that. So when you actually dive into the statistics of the mortality rates between different energy sources, uranium has the least mortality rate than any other energy. So every terawatt of energy that is produced, the mortality rate for nuclear energy is 0.04. Yeah, you heard me right, 0.04 versus coal. Coal is actually 100 mortality rate for every terawatt hour of coal being produced. Oil is at 36, biomass is at 12, natural gas is at 4. And so nuclear is actually the safest form of energy out there, and people still have a lot of misconceptions about this sector. One of the other misconceptions is the amount of nuclear waste there actually is. So nuclear waste, like if you were to actually put this nuclear waste into a cube, I mean, if you're looking at the whole history of 63 years of operating history and all the nuclear waste that have actually been accumulated, this cube would actually be smaller than a Boeing 747 plane. Now, that is very concerning because there's a lot of misinformation about the nuclear waste and all those different things. Now, if you were able to attend the conference, be sure to leave your comment down below. What did you get from this? I mean, I got a lot of information. I mean, I'm still going to be processing this information for a long time. And I think that it just gives me more conviction on my investments, especially into the specific companies. I heard a lot of the CEOs come on from different companies, and they were able to share about what uranium is, what it looks like, how their company is performing in terms of uranium production and mining and such. And so that was just very helpful for Rick to put that together. I felt like it was a very awesome experience. And so I want you to leave your comment down below if you were able to attend the conference, the boot camp for uranium. If you weren't, leave your comment down below on what is something that you're bullish on about uranium. Is there something I'm missing? Be sure to leave that down below. Hit the like button, subscribe, and I appreciate y'all for joining the Money Level Show. Peace.